10-part series on Austrian economics. This will be an introduction, and I'll start assuming you know nothing. By the end of the series, I hope to explain more complex ideas like central banking. So whether you're new to this school of thought or refreshing on the basics, there should be something here for you. To start, we need to know what the heck I'm even talking about. If you found this video, chances are you know that Austrian economics doesn't just mean how they do business in Austria. But you still might be wondering what makes Austrian economics unique. We can start by asking what we even mean by economics. A definition from Google states that economics is the branch of knowledge concerned with the production, consumption, and transfer of wealth. That's a nice simple definition that gets the point across. But now that we know what economics is, what makes this school Austrian? Austrian economics gets its name from its founders, such as Karl Menger, who were Austrian economists who developed the ideas central to this school of thought. However, these ideas have since been picked up and popularized outside of Austria by economists like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. What sets Austrian economics apart from other schools of thought is its method. First, let's take a look at quote-unquote mainstream economics. By this, I mean economic ideas you might have learned if you took an Econ 101 class in university. Mainstream economics derives its ideas from two main schools of thought, Keynesianism and the Chicago School. Since there's lots of resources to learn about these perspectives, and this is a video about Austrian economics, it'll suffice to say that while Keynesians and Chicago School economists come to wildly different conclusions about lots of things, like the cause of the Great Depression and how the government should be involved in the market, they both use the same method, empiricism. Empiricism just means that they rely on observational data to support their conclusions. Empiricism can be a great way to learn about the world, and it's the basis of science, but it can also lead us astray. Think about your superstitious friend who insists that a black cat crossed his path and then he had a terrible day. It may be true that he had a terrible day, and before that happened, a black cat crossed his path, but how do we know that the black cat caused the bad day? To address problems like these, scientists use a method to help them to be sure of their conclusions. It requires using controlled experiments where they can change one variable at a time to observe the effect and then repeating the experiment to be sure. The problem with mainstream economics is that there's no way to do a controlled experiment to see what happens. First, because economics tends to happen on such a big scale that there's no way to control the variables. And second, because it would be unethical even if you could. It would involve playing around with the prosperities of whole societies just to see what happens. So what Keynesian and Chicago School economists do is try to analyze historical data for patterns. Ludwig von Mises criticized this approach in Human Action by pointing out that the interpretation of past events relies on having the right principles by which to understand it. Pick any period from recent history, and we likely have mounds of statistics on a whole host of social metrics. Any economist trying to make sense of this will have to be able to pull out the signal from the noise. But what you think is a signal is determined by your underlying theories. Consider the Great Depression. It's been over 90 years, and Keynesians and Chicago schoolers still disagree on what caused it. To make sense of the past, we need to have the right principles. For example, scientists can figure out that the moon was formed when the Earth collided with another planet, but they rely on the principles of physics and geology to do so. So, if economists can't rely on historical data to derive their principles, then where do they get them from? Mises' answer was reason. In this way, economics is like math. We start with irrefutable axioms and then logically deduce conclusions. For example, mathematicians can prove that every triangle's angles add up to 180 degrees without ever measuring a real triangle, let alone measuring every single real triangle. This rationalistic process is at the heart of Austrian economics. Mises calls the method Praxeology. It's the study of human action, because Mises starts with what he calls the axiom of action. The axiom simply states that humans act. Specifically, Mises is using the word action to refer to purposeful behavior. The axiom is irrefutable because if you try to refute it by making an argument against it, you're now engaging in purposeful behavior and thus demonstrating the fact that humans behave with purpose. We act. Now, this doesn't mean that all human behavior is purposeful, just that humans do engage in behaviors which are rationally aimed at some purpose. And to be clear, Mises is under no illusion that humans always act rationally in the sense that we're always logically moving towards our goals. It's just that humans have goals and we take actions to bring them about. Mises forcefully disagreed with what other economists call the homo economicus. This is the idea of a person who always acts in his own rational self-interests. The hope is that this forms a rough model of how people actually act. Mises thinks that this is imaginary nonsense. He accepts that some people can have goals against their own interests, like a charity, or that humans can have goals that seem irrational, like this dude who tattooed himself to look like a dragon. Mises would just say that you have to take each person's goals on his own terms. If this guy wants to look like a dragon, then getting freaky forehead implants to look like horns was a purposeful activity. So you might be asking, what's the big deal? Humans act, but it doesn't tell you much about why the stock market goes up or down. And while this idea seems simple, and it is, it can lead to profound insights about how markets work. Just consider, if people act, it means they behave purposefully, which means that each action has a purpose, an end, something the person is aiming at or hoping to get or achieve. And since humans act, we can deduce that people have ends. Since we also know that action is required to bring about the end, then it's not already satisfied. Something has to be done to bring it about. These are the means. We use means to achieve our ends. So we can deduce from the principle of action that humans have means and ends. By using certain assumptions, we can use the principles of human action to derive conclusions about specific phenomena, like money or central banking, that hold true whenever the assumptions are true. This takes us back to the start of the video, when we asked just what exactly economics is. Mises would answer that economics is just a subset of the study of human action. It's the study of choices. Specifically, it's the study of how humans employ the scarce means available to them to achieve their most desired ends. Over the next 9 videos, I hope to show how knowing that people have means and ends can explain the choices they make, why they trade, why prices get set where they are, and why people save or invest. Join me on the next video, where I'll dig deeper into the implications of ends and means and the idea of subjective value, which is essential to understanding not just Austrian economics, but economics as a whole. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and if you really want to help out the channel, just share it with a friend. Thanks, and see you next time.